r/Askreddit. Redditors who have been clinically dead. What did you experience in death, if anything? I was dead for 6 minutes. I was laying on the gurney, and I was getting colder. Somewhere my body started warming up and everything became really calm and peaceful. I was not longer in pain. All the noise from ER just went away. It was really enjoyable. I was thinking about my daughter, and I was remembering all the things we had done. Slowly it was just black and nothing. There was no knowledge of anything. I explain it as it was like before I was born. Then the worst thing in the world is being revived. I starting hearing loud noises. I felt this massive pain. Then there was the nastiest stench ever. The smell was like every dead animal had crawled in my nose. The smell was so bad I started vomiting. I remember the DRs turning me on my side and watching my vomit spray on a nurse. Dying was the most pleasant thing I have ever experienced, and being revived the worse. What was the cause for your death? This is a very unsettling question out of context. There are some researchers who have been collecting and quantifying the data of near-death experiences, NDEs, for years now. They have created 6 categories/stages of NDEs that generally sum up most experiences. 1. The hellish experience. It can be either a mildly uncomfortable experience, a cold, dark, damp loveless experience, or the traditional flames and devil experience. Sometimes say they are drawn out of this realm by an indescribable love. Very few people recount experiencing this. 2. There is another type of experience, where one has an out-of-body perspective, and can travel freely. Oftentimes this happens in an operation room, where one's heart has stopped, and the doctors are working to revive the patient. The individual may be able to go to other rooms in the hospital, or travel across the country. If they remain in the hospital room, they do not always recognize their own bodies on the table, and can feel confused. Quick note, there have been a surge in NDEs since the 1960s, when resuscitation techniques became more advanced. 3. Much like many of the other Redditors' comments, there is another experience of blissful, warm darkness that just feels comfortable. It is indescribable nothingness, often without memory or any inkling of consciousness at all. 4. The next experience is similar to the last, but with an additional light that is usually far away, that emanates warmth and love and forgiveness. The individual is either attracted to this light and goes toward it, or the light itself comes to the person. It allegedly gets better and better the closer one draws to the light, and so they continue. Obviously this is where the phrase go/don't go to the light likely comes from. 5. This experience continues where the last leaves off, where the person has broken through the light to the other side. They now are experiencing a love/compassion/forgiveness/state of consciousness that is unlike anything they can put into words. Sometimes they encounter a sort of guide. This could be a loving anonymous being, or a religious figure. If they experience this, it is sometimes linked to their beliefs on Earth, but not always. This experience is sometimes accompanied by the most beautiful music. This being may present them to loved ones, or show them a life review. This is a very common experience of those who have had NDEs. It may be at this point, where the deer decides, or is told to return to their body. There is sometimes a choice, because they have work left to accomplish in their lives. And I put that last part in quotes, because of how many people cite that as their reasons on coming back. 6. The final experience goes beyond the previous state of love and consciousness and is experienced only by a relatively few people compared to the previous others. They say that they experience of becoming one with the universe/universal energy that unites everything/God. They have stated that they understand everything, that knowledge is known just by thinking of a topic. Disclaimer. People have different words to describe all these experiences, but what they typically agree on is that words themselves cannot come close to explaining their encounter for all of the aforementioned NDEs. Most experiences are overwhelmingly pleasant. They lose fear of death, and they cannot wait to return to this state. However, they know they must wait. The NDEs that I've looked into pretty much all fall into these categories, so I'd like to hear any others that might not. As you can tell, this interests me greatly. I want to end this by saying that, if you wind up researching NDEs, come to your own conclusions about them. Is there a reason for someone to be pushing a certain belief on you? I have confidence that what people say about their NDEs, they themselves wholly believe to be true. Whether or not you do, is up to your own judgment. There are people who make videos and give talks about NDEs they supposedly experience, but to me some seem to be fake and over-rehearsed. Take what you want from my spiel, and if you have any questions about this, I've done a fair share of looking into the topic and would love to discuss further. If you want any directions on where to look first into gaining your own knowledge of NDEs, I can definitely help you find something. Your NDE plug out. Not really sure what happened and it still freaks me out to this day. My daughter was 4 and developed pneumonia. Her breathing would stop in her sleep, so we took her into the emergency room. She was there for a total of 5 days. For the first 3 days her health kept deteriorating. And on the 3rd day my girlfriend got a call that her mother had collapsed and was taken to the hospital. She was without oxygen for 20 minutes and was declared brain dead. That night my daughter woke up and asked about grandma. No one had said anything to her or in the room with her. We asked her what did she mean. She told us that grandma came to her in a dream and said it's not your time yet. I'll go for you. Immediately the next day she was almost 100% better. That is ducking crazy. Wow. Instant chills. A black void. Then waking up in ER surrounded by people running around like crazy. I was cold as duck, but in reality, just room temp. Had to add and say that it was relatively peaceful, like being wrapped in a big warm blanket. I died twice after I got MRSA into my heart area after a major surgery. I don't remember much of anything when I was out. Cliché as it was I saw a light, but damn that year sucked. Understatement of the year Lamo. Yeah that year, where I died sucked pretty bad. Usually when I die twice it's only that month that sucks pretty bad. The rest of the year is okay. Talk about a shitty respawn after the first death. I hope that school nurse got into serious hot water over that. By all that may be holy, an EpiPen is for immediate use. That's what they are for. This one heated me up. I'm a substitute teacher, and even we are given instruction on how to use one. All teachers are trained, so the rule is that if we are not trained, get a teacher and make sure it's administered immediately. I agree, that nurse should have been in trouble, if not fired. I have literally zero medical training, and I know how to use an EpiPen. That nurse should never be allowed to work in a care-related field again. If the nurse was waiting for paramedics, then what even the point of her being there? This reminded me of the lady in the office when I was first grade. I had asthma as a child. Very thankfully I outgrew it, but at 7 it was still really rough. To keep kids from losing their inhalers or medications we were supposed to take during school hours, we had to go to the office to get our dose. Even at 7 that made no sense to me considering that, while yes, I was supposed to use my inhaler at certain times, it was also supposed to be on my person in case of an asthma attack. One day, the worst happened, and I started having an asthma attack in THR classroom. The teacher aide hauled ass to the office to get my inhaler, only to be told by the office woman that it's not time for her to use it yet. She just needs to take a deep breath. I don't remember much, but the story I was told is the aide threatened to beat the woman's ass if she didn't get out my inhaler and told her it would be on her if I died because she was refusing to give me my medication. She ended up handing it over and the aide ran back to me. It took a few tries to get my breathing back to normal and I guess I was getting blue. The teacher had called my mom as soon as they had me breathing again, and she and the aide told my mom what happened once she got there and was holding me. My mom picked me up, asked the aide to walk with her to the office and point out which lady it was. Again, this is just what I was told happened because I was young and don't remember for myself. I guess my mom had me sit on the little waiting area couch where I usually sat when waiting for my after lunch puffs of my inhaler. Mom could be heard screaming at the bitch in the office through the entire front hallway. The aide had sat with me to make sure I would still be okay while mom went into the office. I have no memory of what was said, but I know my parents went back and had a discussion with the superintendent a day or so later. Not sure if that lady got fired or not, but I know she was never the one giving me my inhaler at lunchtime after that. Overdosed. Flatlined. Didn't see a damn thing. When they hit me with Narcan, I woke up really mad, ripping IVs out of my arms, cursing out the poor, amazing staff who saved my life. Good times. 6 years ago now with all that crap behind me luckily. Edit. Narcan. This is my story exactly. Waking up just pissed as duck. I want to go back to sleep. I told the medics to duck off in going back to sleep and heard the scariest "do not ducking go back to sleep" like he meant it with every fiber of his being. So terrifying. I didn't get to go back to sleep. Edit. So for the record, this was my first time use. I thought it was like cocaine and you do an entire line. A matchstick head size is enough. I was extremely wrong. I wasn't a junkie, didn't experience withdrawals. I did throw up once I got to the hospital, but I did go back to the drug for a bit after because I felt like a part of me did actually die. The withdrawals I felt after that are way different. I'm clean now though. Had a good year. The previous 2 were fucking tough though. Heroin was my escape to feeling stuck in a profession that wasn't for me and couldn't find happiness anywhere because I had graduated and left all my friends at school, moved back home, and was unable to live a life I wanted to. Bet not. You know he'd have been furious if he pulled you back from the jaws of oblivion and you popped your eyes open and hit snooze. Really glad you stayed awake and with us, by the way. Anaphylaxis. Wasn't breathing. I considered all the hallucinations I experienced likely due to hypoxic episode until I told my mom what I saw. A middle-aged man who wasn't in scrubs standing still at the end of my bed while all staff were running around and doing their business. I was having a nonverbal conversation with him and he was telling me to calm down, focus on breathing. He wore a tropical style button-down shirt, one of those old school newsboys hats, and had a very pleasant demeanor. Mom showed me a photo of my grandpa that I never had seen before, and it was the guy at the foot of my bed, and he died before I was even born. Edit. Didn't know this would comfort so many people. Just remember not to worry too much about death, and remember to enjoy your life while you have it. That's super eerie. Comforting though. Friend of mine described it as deeply relaxing and that she could feel herself drifting away but was brought back just as she was ready to leave. After that, she embraced life and death. She said she doesn't fear death anymore since it was so relaxing to experience. Similar experience here. As you're dying, you start feeling tired in a way you never have before or will again until you die. The sheer act of staying alive is exhausting. But then it's all blank until I woke up from a coma a couple weeks later. You don't even remember the actual moment of death, and it takes weeks for your mind to remember everything leading up to it. I was in a ton of pain before and after because a couple of my organs were perforated, but dying itself wasn't painful. I agree that I'm also not afraid of death. Not even just because of the pain factor, but because it feels less unknown to me, and there isn't time for regret when it happens. The sheer act of staying alive is exhausting. I very much agree. This seems to be the majority of experiences in this thread. Makes me feel comfort and fear simultaneously. Really weird. My wife and I discussed this at length 4 years ago. She died twice in 3 months, needing full resuscitation both times. Both were lengthy rescues. One resuscitation was off and on for nearly 40 minutes. I asked her later, when she had recovered, if she remembered anything at all during the time she was clinically dead. She remembered nothing. Blackness. No light. No relatives and former pets waiting for her. Just black. Thankfully, also no pain. She finally passed 18 months ago, and I hope she felt no pain or worry the final time. Edit to add. It started with 2 spontaneous brain bleeds. Technically, it started with her having lupus. The first brain bleed led to her passing, but they did a craniotomy, revived her, then a rebleed. The trauma from all that caused her lupus to set fire, which led to complete kidney failure and another cardiac arrest, passing and recovery, which led to 2 strokes. She recovered enough to be home and mostly independent, but having to go to dialysis 3 times a week for 3 years. She passed the final test to get on the kidney transplant list on Wednesday and had a massive cardiac/respiratory event at dialysis on Friday where she passed again, but was kept alive on life support. I waited a week hoping for recovery, but we disconnected life support per her wishes, a topic we had talked about many times. I'm sorry for your loss, and for what sounds like a lot of trauma leading up to it. I'm glad you got to ask her what it felt like. It has to give you some comfort. Sorry for your loss. This really was not the ideal post to stumble across during my nightly existential crisis. Hey, I have nightly existential dread too. An intense panic about what happens next and what I'm going to miss out on. But this whole thread has really put me at ease, and I'm not so worried anymore. I hope your dread leaves you alone soon. I know 3 people that have been clinically dead and have come back. What they described is something much different than what people are talking about here. They all said, if you paraphrase, that it feels as if you're passing out. Someone compared it to odding on whippets, nitrous oxide, a feeling of your conscience slowly getting focused into one point in the exact middle of your head, while your limbs lose feeling in a tingling, pleasant way and then you lose consciousness. One girl said that when she came back into conscience she was hallucinating because she had no idea what was going on and that she started dreaming of something safe. I pointy her mother hugging her in a warm bed. Can I ask if there's something you're doing, like medical work or drugs, or chilling with zombies or something, that's exposed you to 3? I thought coming back from being dead was super rare. Psych wards. I know probably 10 people who have died and come back to life after suicide attempts, and I myself survived getting stabbed in the face and hip. I think about death a lot, like an insane, worrying amount. I cry about it a lot too. I'm terrified to die, I'm terrified of what comes after, and I'm terrified of losing people I love. This thread has actually made me feel a bit better about it, so thank you. OP1 lost my mom last year and I remember her telling me, when I was little, because I would say at first, that she was scared to die. I'm glad to know that it isn't as bad as we both thought. Hope you will accept some hugs from an internet stranger. I have the same fear. I think about it every day and I have panic attacks. This thread does help a little. I coded after surgery. I remember being able to see and hear everything and understand what was happening, but I couldn't physically feel anything. It was deeply unsettling. My heart also stopped after surgery 3 years ago. I only remember them getting me back and drifting between darkness and seeing the nurses panic. Like you mentioned, I felt nothing and was just an impartial observer. The aftermath was the worst. Realizing how close I was to oblivion and recalling the dissociation was horrifying. People often say, oh, I'm not worried, she's a fighter, when someone gets very ill. But me? I feel like I was just ready to watch myself fade into the dark despite being content and having things to live for. Unsettling is exactly the right word. That was the weird part for me too. The impartiality. It's like the emotional part of my brain stopped working before the intellectual part did. I basically was just patiently waiting to find out whether I was going to be dead or not. I had no feeling about it at all at the time. The unsettled feeling came later. I died twice after I got MRSA into my heart area after a major surgery. I don't remember much of anything when I was out, Cliché as it was, I saw a light, but damn, that year sucked. Understatement of the year, Lamo. Yeah, that year where I died sucked pretty bad. Usually when I die twice it's only that month that sucks pretty bad. The rest of the year is okay. Talk about a shitty respawn after the first death. Reading this thread while stoned was a terrible mistake. Doing the same right now. Phil Swidman.